Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this morning. We're going to go ahead and wait just another minute to let more people join the room, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Sesame Mish, and I'm the Director of Growth Marketing at Intellimize. We're so happy to have all of you join us today for our fireside chat, Strategies for Driving More Web Leads and Revenue. And today we're featuring Yalif and Jeremy Epperson, two conversion rate optimization experts with very different backgrounds and very different perspectives. So this should be a fun time today. I'll go ahead and get things started right away and turn things over to Jeremy. Jeremy?
The Chief Growth Officer at GrowthHit. We are an agency consulting firm that works with on conversion optimization, market and customer research, growth marketing. I guess, what I want to bring to the webinar is I've started CRO or growth team for 114 different companies. And there's a lot of interesting insights that I want to be able to share in relation to that.
Awesome. We're so glad to do this together, Jeremy. Hi, my name is Yalif. I'm co-founder and CEO of Intellimize. We automatically optimize websites by personalizing them for each unique visitor in the moment to drive more revenue, more customers, and more leads to sales. In my background, I'm a former airplane designer who spent 10 years in product and then 10 years in marketing before starting Intellimize with a couple of friends. Jeremy and I have known each other a long time, and we love talking about conversion rate optimization, or CRO. We have really different perspectives. And we also have a bunch of shared points of view as we work with different clients and both having been marketers before. And we love talking about this. And we thought it'd be fun to do that in front of an audience today. And we hope this is interactive. During the conversation, if you've got questions, pop them into chat. We'd love to go through them. Now, Jeremy, the last time we spoke, you talked about some blind spots most people have around customers and research. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably the number one thing that I see get in the way of marketers is, there's these assumptions or myths that get proliferated, or, we think we understand our customers, but a lot of times there's blind spots that's actually costing us in, leads, conversion rate, revenue. So I actually break this down in a way where there's basically 4 customer blind spots. So I'm going to throw these out, and then we can kind of talk about this. So one is everything you think you know about your customers is probably wrong. 2, customers aren't who you think they are. 3, they behave differently than you think. And 4, they have different reasons for needing your product or service than you think. So the real issue here is that you are not your customer. Even if you are your customer, even if you're the exact demo and target person that would buy a product or service, you're inside your business every day and you understand the product and you understand what's happening with the marketing, you understand the positioning. So we have these blind spots, and the only real way to overcome that as a marketer or, as an optimizer is to conduct primary and secondary research to get at what are those issues that are, blocking conversion. Can we better understand customers? Are there things that we're not doing right that aren't aligned with motivation or intent, or, what's causing abandonment, things like that. Yeah.
At least for me, that resonates very strongly. I think, conversion rate optimization that looks like throwing spaghetti on a wall is a great way to burn a lot of calories, but nothing replaces intimately understanding a day in the life of your customer, walking a day in their shoes and using that as inspiration for the things you're going to go test. Now, you did talk about, spending time researching to do that. And I know we're talking about optimization, and a lot of people talk about those as different things. I'd posit that you shouldn't. I think a lot of people say, hey, I'm going to do testing to learn or testing to optimize. I think that it's a false trade-off, that you should be able to do both at the same time. That in fact, smart humans, in particular enabled with good machine learning, do this all the time, where you are simultaneously able to learn more about which messages resonate for which parts of your audience at the same time that you're making more money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's definitely some different approaches to that, right? Like as many optimizers as there are, there's probably different opinions. But yeah, the way I think about it is, research for research's sake is not necessarily that valuable, right? Like it might like change the way you think, which is powerful, or, you can get a better understanding of customers. But I see a lot of clients and businesses where, they're putting hours towards these things and then they struggle to actually put that into the field, right? Like actually test against that. So they're driving ROI. So that's one component of it. The other component is testing for testing's sake without understanding what you're optimizing for is a real problem, right? So like, if you do research for research's sake, it's probably not going to make you very much money. If you just test blindly, it's also not going to make you as much money. Your validated win rate is going to be lower. So bundling those together, I always talk about this dual track approach where it's like, let's start testing or, increase testing velocity as fast as we can, but let's also concurrently, do that research to bundle that in with how we're testing.
Jeremy, I think you might have an example or two that might help illustrate some of these points. You want me to go to those?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Take it away.
Yeah, I really want this to be concrete for everybody who's listening. So this is a really interesting like e-com example. Basically, this is a company that sells like helmets, mostly to like law enforcement, like police, things like that. We use a number. I always talk about having a 360-degree understanding of customers, which means you're pulling from these different research methods to understand like what is it that's blocking conversion. So like in this particular example, we used analytics data to understand that the amount of users who were taking the upsell on the product page specifically was relatively low, if almost non-existent. What we also saw is from an analytics perspective, from a heat mapping perspective, is there was a lot of interaction and clicking on these, the different upsells because it looks like they're toggled on, right? So you're like, maybe I just want to buy this product. Maybe I don't want to buy these other 2, 3, 4 products. And then the price was rendering as this really high price because you're packaging and bundling these things together. So through like session recording, some other research methods too, we found that people were confused. They thought they had to buy everything at once, which is not what we want, right? We want them to have the freedom to choose. So what we tested is, what if we just remove those upsells? Does that remove the distraction and the friction and the misunderstanding about price and the misunderstanding of like how those upsells work? And just by doing that, we increased purchases by 27%. So that's that's pretty impressive, right? Like I'm pretty sure anybody on the line would love 20% more purchases if they're e-com, or 20% more leads, So
good way to get promoted.
It's good. Yeah, it's definitely everybody's happy. So yeah, that's hopefully a concrete example for that.
That resonates a ton. And while we haven't found universal truths in conversion rate optimization, and we'll go more into that in a little bit, simplicity is something we've seen happen over and over and over again, generally working. Not every time. We've seen people add complexity and it work, but generally simplifying past the point where you think is okay and letting your prospects tell you if that's all right has been a high probability play. Another one has been to engage them in the moment, where you would see, hey, are they sending you a signal of how they're thinking about things? And here's one company, Jetson, a customer of ours, that took the signal of somebody moving their mouse off screen. They say, hey, they're about to abandon. They have exit intent. And they made one last attempt to convert the visitor by putting a pop-up window, you see that in the lower right, and offering a 30% discount on the product. And they used this exit intent criteria to pinpoint which visitors to give this discount to, so that they didn't have to give the discount to everyone. That resulted in a 12% increase in conversions, catching people who would have lost, getting 12% more conversions overall. So exit intent is powerful. For e-commerce, we've also seen it used in B2B websites. One final example to bring this idea to life. ClearStart is a brand in Unilever's Dermalogica division. and they decided to use real life social proof on their site, eschewing the traditional sort of perfectly beautiful models that so many websites use. And you see that in the lower right. It worked really well for them. And we suggest that if you decide to get real with the people you're showing on your site, curate it so that you don't get spammed, but then showing real life people and using your product can be powerful, believable proof that your product can work for people like your visitors. You can humanize your brand, make it more relatable. Of note, they also tried changing the hero image from one focusing on product to one focusing on the customer, the hero itself. And we've seen both work in different situations. So as is so often the case, we suggest testing. And while that is what ClearStart found, what we found even more true, as I mentioned a minute ago, there aren't universal truths in conversion rate optimization. It's not like every button should be red. And Jeremy, I know you've had a lot of thoughts on this topic. Want to share?
Oh, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah, for like the exit intent specifically, we probably run like almost 100 tests on exit intent, like just from a perspective of a user experience and like what we're trying to do for them, like gating content, blocking content, preventing them from, being able to like interact with the site is typically not the best way to go. So yeah, I would definitely lean towards how do we capture contact information. If you're like a B2B or lead generation, how do you make sure that people can like get the details they need? We talk about task completion on an e-commerce site. Like they're trying to achieve something, and if you block them from doing that, they're going to be probably frustrated enough that they're going to abandon and you're losing money. So yeah, definitely. As far as like the universal truths, I've spent a decade of my life purely dedicated to just studying this and testing and working with hundreds of companies. And I really wanted there to be universal truths, believe me.
You and me both.
Yeah, it's something that like took me, a couple of years to like get past and realize I'm not as smart as I think I am, and there's no universal truth. So what are the things that we can control as like marketers and optimizers? The one thing that we've seen like, pushes direction, like results up into the right is testing velocity. So like if we don't know that there's like specific best practices that always work, if we don't know that, if our validated win rate is, 20, 30%, we're gonna have a lot of losing tests, right? The only way we can accelerate results is accelerating testing. And that's definitely something that should be focused on by teams, because we've just seen that like kind of hockey stick approach from, we're running, one test a month and we're not testing at all. It's very easy to tie results directly to we're testing faster, we're getting insights faster, we're driving more revenue, we're getting a better understanding of customers. It's really, really powerful.
Jeremy, we found the same thing, that there aren't universal truths, that it's not like every button should be red. I think it's one of the reasons CRO exists as a career path. It's one of the reasons, our companies exist. And we too, the only thing we've seen reliably time and time again lead to lift is what you said, high velocity testing. We often talk about it as like trying multiple generations of ideas, where each generation of idea builds on the previous one. And then you want to maximize the lift from those ideas. And high velocity testing does exactly that. And you weren't suggesting it, but we've sometimes seen customers say, sweet, everything I've ever heard of, I'm going to go try. And that we found to be like throwing spaghetti against the wall. It may feel good in the moment because you're running really quickly, but you don't move the metrics you want to move as much. And so pairing the customer insight that you mentioned before with hypotheses and high velocity testing, that's a winning formula from our perspective. Does that resonate for you?
Absolutely. I've definitely seen that work. Yeah. And as far as the testing velocity, there are a lot of obstacles to testing velocity. There's a number of ways from a team perspective, from a research perspective, there's a lot of different ways that I've seen in teams and businesses where they want to test quickly, but there are things that get in the way, they get stuck. And they know the ROI is there if they can make it happen. But I think we should definitely dig into how do people overcome those problems that we see over and over and over again, because that's definitely going to be tied to ROI.
Totally. And I know you in some of our earlier discussions, you said often that the single biggest limiter is traffic. Interestingly, we have found, when you can test multiple ideas at once, we happen to use ML to accelerate that. But the limitation is often the marketer. Folks aren't used to being able to try all their ideas at once. And we find they may be the point that we see, but there are also a bunch of other things, as you said, to focus on, like approvals. Is it the hippo, the highest paid person in the room, or compliance? Is it creative? Like somebody's got to write words or cut images or videos or designs. Is it what you talked about in the first point, customer insight, true customer insight? Those are often limiting factors to people doing true hypothesis-driven testing, rather than like, wouldn't it be neat if we could try that? And over time, we find that it's a matter of perspective. Does the marketer feel bad, like, oh man, I'm holding everything up? Or are they like, no, dude, this is a superpower. I can go as fast as I want, and I'm gonna make sure that while I can fire bullets, tests really quickly, I'm going to make sure they're well aimed, each one of them, and find that right balance between, a good hypothesis and running quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. The one way that we conceptualize this on my team is there's kind of two ends of the spectrum. There's on one end, we don't know what to test, so we're not testing, which means we need more research, insights, data points. The other end is we have too many ideas and we don't know how to prioritize it. So it's slowing us down. So like, where do we start out of these 150 things? Like when we do research, when we start projects with clients, in the first 90 days, we'll have somewhere between 90 and 150 data-driven hypotheses that come from research methods. They very quickly get overwhelmed and say, okay, what are we going to do with all this? So yeah, prioritization is definitely key. And we have a framework for that. Like it's kind of customized to like different teams, but one of those two approaches, if you're stuck because you don't have enough ideas, even scrappy, quick, let's just grab some customer insights, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, will help. If you're struggling with, we have too many ideas, then it's a matter of prioritization. So
that resonates a lot. We run into it all the time, and we like using machine learning to sort of break the constraint, to tell everybody to try everything at once. And you still need some notion of prioritization because you want to test high probability plays.
Absolutely.
Jeremy, do you want to talk through a couple of examples to bring this high velocity testing idea to life?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right.
Okay, so this is a case study. This is like a makeup company in the e-com retail space, obviously. One of the things that we found is, and this is a quick turn test, so getting at the point of, we don't need to rebuild product pages from scratch. We don't need to completely restructure the checkout. There's a lot of quick wins, quick turn type tests that can have a dramatic impact for the user and what their experience is without having to run hundreds of lines of code, right? So in this particular instance, we saw from like usability studies, from session recordings, that there was a disconnect between, site visitors are landing on a page, they come to a category page, it says buy now, we take them from buy now to let's dump them on the product page, then let's force them through the cart, then let's force them through multiple step checkout, right? So it's just a lot of friction. So if they're actually at that level of motivation and intent that they're like, I want to buy this one product and I want to buy it now. And we had a lot of analytics data to support that. It's like the average transaction size is small, right? They come to the site repeatedly, throughout the month or quarter or year, but they're only buying one product at a time. So like, let's optimize for that experience and reduce that friction. So what we did is we took them straight from that category page straight into the cart. They're buying that one item just by removing those extra clicks and the extra friction and removing that abandonment from losing them on that extra step of the product page. We actually got a 10% increase in sales.
And you think, what do people do to drive 10% increase in overall sales? Like a lot more than this. It is great to see it. And I must admit, we have seen this specific example as well, and other similar, in general, removing steps in a flow has panned out really well. Occasionally, we've seen adding steps in a flow help when people feel more qualified, but this is generally the rule of thumb. Resonates a ton. Should I go to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it. So this is about objections in the checkout itself. So when you're thinking about a funnel and optimizing across that funnel, there's different abandonment points. Obviously, when somebody gets to the checkout, like that's very high intent, right? Like they didn't do that on accident. Their motivation's pretty high. They obviously are interested in making a purchase. So in this particular instance, we had a pretty high abandonment rate from the checkout, but the rest of the funnel was like pretty streamlined, right? So that was the one pain point, is like, we're getting them to the finish line, but we're not pushing them across it. So, what's the real deal here? We did some exit intent polling, which I love. I love grabbing voice of customer data because you can hear what are the pain points that are causing people to abandon, first of all, and how do they articulate, and how do we take that and tie it to what we actually optimize or test on the site. So in this specific example, we found that there's just like 3 or 4 key things that were misunderstandings or confusion or friction points that were causing that abandonment. So all we did is literally the only thing we changed on the site is we changed the color to blue just to like draw emphasis, but really what it comes down to is that content. It's like, here's the 3 objections, let's overcome that right at that highest friction point where they're about ready to make that purchase. And just from making that kind of nuanced tweak and like removing those objections, we got a 6.7% increase in sales.
It's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Resonates a ton. And if these trigger questions for anyone watching, please feel free to put them in chat. I'm going to go to the next example. Jeremy, work for you?
Yeah, great.
We have a customer, Drift, who, among other things, experimented with welcoming back visitors. How many of us, we can't see a show of hands here, but are guilty of not acknowledging that a prospect has been here before? Or just as bad, if not worse, treating a customer like a prospect. I feel like it's the biggest sin we as marketers commit, right? The existing customer shows up and we try to sell them as if they've never seen us before. Simply remembering those details and creating a different experience for those visitors can actually have a really outsized impact on your prospect's behavior. And you can actually take this visit memory further and remember, I don't know, for example, in a B2B context, someone who's been to your site 4 or 5 times, they're clearly interested. You could put a more aggressive talk to sales message in front of them. Or if you're using Drift, you could put a more aggressive Drift bot in front of them to push them to go talk to sales. And so this is something, this principle of meeting your prospects where they are in their funnel with you almost always is one that pays dividends with our customers, because their prospects feel more heard and feel things that are more relevant. Jeremy, trigger anything for you?
Yeah. First of all, I love Drift, so that's totally an aside. But I think just their approach, how they think, how they think about like marketing, how they're like trying to personalize, and how like seamless they make that is really, really incredible. And yeah, this is something that I've found when you're in B2B or in SaaS sales. We're talking about traffic volume and testing how that applies to strategy and stuff. It's like, the volume's going to be lower here, right? So like from capturing a lead to like an ABM sales approach, we have to know where they are, right? If we just blindly slap up like content and just hope that we're meeting everyone where they are, then that's kind of a losing equation. So the personalization aspect on this, we've tested a number of different ways around segmentation, or are we mapping this to your user journey? If you have the research to back it, and you can test your way iteratively into how to personalize that, it can be really powerful.
Amen. Resonates a bunch. I think you've got another one about the user path.
Yeah, and that's part of what we do too, right? So like, when I think about like CRO or optimization or personalization, like these are kind of different words for let's drive more leads and make more sales, right? So from our perspective on like this one client, they basically were just trying to dump everybody on one page and say, hey, just come buy what we have, right? But there's very discrete different needs for each of these products based on the children's age. So it's like obviously like ed tech. So for them, like driving leads, it's like, where your child is in their education is obviously going to be dramatically different on like what you're looking for, the solution. So just by taking this kind of personalized approach of like, we're going to allow you to self-select into one of these 4 buckets based on the content that we have for you. We went from a 4% click-through rate on this page to a 44% click-through rate, which is, I know, right? Sometimes we test things and like even I'm surprised. But yeah, this definitely just shows like the power of personalization, and what the expectations are for people too. And like 2020, for what they expect to see on a website, it's like, moving towards personalization is no longer like a fun thing that you can try. It's more an expectation that people are starting to have, right? So really interesting.
I'm totally with you. And we have observed, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, telling a Fortune 100 company you're going to have multiple versions of your site running at once. And they're like, what are you talking about? The site's going to look broken. Here we are with, like Netflix and Amazon teaching all of us that your experience is going to be personalized every step of the way, has made, at least from what we've seen, a whole lot more people not only comfortable, but saying what you said, which is, hey, this actually produces better experiences and better results.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One final example in this high velocity testing notion is we've got another customer, Bonusly, that experimented with the placement of their nav bar. They actually found it more impactful to separate the navigation links visually from the call to action in the top nav. This helped the try for free and sign up links pop more there in the upper right of the screen that you see in the lower right of the slide. We've had other customers test nav bar content, including showing hiding elements based on the predicted value of the customer. Like we had one that actually went so extreme that they said, hey, when I see this as a large enterprise, I'm literally going to remove pricing from the screen to force them to call sales. Okay, I'm not sure every sales team would be okay with that, but for that particular marketer, it worked. Another one tried taking a long list of text links. In this case, it was e-commerce. It was product categories, and turn them into this set of images, an overlay. So you click on that, rather than getting this list, you got like a whole bunch of images that help people navigate through to the right category for them. So another idea to stoke your thinking, spur your thinking in high velocity testing. Now, taking a step back, when you're doing high velocity testing, one of the things we often see that is make or break for the program is, what are you choosing to optimize for? I mean, measuring for the right goals is key. For example, many of us have these multi-step flows on our site where we only make money at the end. I'll make up a hypothetical for the discussion with Jeremy, and let me stop sharing my screen. If, for example, you have a 10-step flow where you make money at step 10 and you're optimizing for on step 1, do you optimize to get to step 2? Or do you optimize to get to step 10? What do you think, Jeremy?
Yeah, I have very strong feelings on this. So, as an agency, having worked on the agency side for as long as I have, I obviously am held accountable for driving results and making companies more money. And we, reliably and kind of predictably do that. But we have to focus on that down funnel attribution, right? It's like, we made these changes, we're driving people deeper in the funnel. But at the end of the day, are we making more money or are we making less money? So I'm a strong advocate of like having macro and micro conversions. We attach, either like a lead conversion goal for like any SaaS B2B, like for any e-commerce site, we always have like a revenue and transactions goal, purchases goal. So we're really big on understanding what that looks like and like having significance around those metrics. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think that intuition makes a lot of sense, and it's where we started, and we're not there anymore. We did exactly that. And we would have ideas on step 1 that when we looked at step 10, like we were like, this is definitely going to be up, and it was down. Or some that we thought this is definitely going to be down, and it was up. And at first we were like, hey, this is beautiful. This is data-driven marketing. Our hypotheses were wrong. But then we saw them going up and down and bouncing around. And we came to believe, we're like wondering, hey, is this noise? And then we came to a counterintuitive conclusion. We find better results when you optimize locally for step 1 to get to step 2, but you can't stop there. You need to do that every single step of the way. So 2 gets you to 3, 3 gets you to 4, and so on. And then you track how was progress from 1 to 10, overall impact. Why? It's actually all about where the drop-off is in your funnel. The more we dug, the more we came to see times when there's a big drop-off point down the road. I'll make it up. Step 7, you got to enter your credit card. You got to enter your social security number. That's a point of big drop-off. And so whether or not my call to action on step 1 was good enough, it's swamped by the impact entering your credit card has, because that's such a big thing to share. And so what we found was, if that drop-off is further down, when you're optimizing step 1 for step 10, you're seeing a lot of noise, because really it's step 7 that's driving a lot of it, that credit card entry. On the other hand, if the big drop-off really was at step 1 and you got a big abandonment problem, no problem. Optimize for step 10, because getting to 2 is almost the same as getting to 10. So that intuition led us to say, you know what? The right answer is optimize each step to get to the next, but you can't stop. Like if you only optimize step 1 to step 2, maybe you're pushing a bubble of unqualified traffic down the funnel that was going to drop anyway. You got to keep doing it every step down the road, which is not common sense. It is not what intuition would tell you, but it's what we found work better overall.
Yeah,
how's it for you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think one aspect of this that we didn't really talk about previously, but like the sophistication of like the technology and tools that we have nowadays, I think enables marketers to be able to do that better than they could have ever done that before. I think if you're talking, like you mentioned 5 years ago, like our industry was not in the same place 5 years ago. The level of maturity and sophistication and like the knowledge and like just how far we've come online has been really impressive. And I think, when you use, software like Intellimize, like that's giving you extra tools to leverage to be able to like map to that full customer journey, to be able to understand all the touch points and to be able to optimize across them. So
it's a really fair point where like if you were doing every one of those steps manually, it would take an awful long time. And then maybe actually the right answer is it doesn't matter. I'm going to optimize step 1 for step 10. When you can automate a bunch of that and spend more time on customer intimacy, you're right. Maybe this emerges. Another thing we've seen emerge is the ability to actually optimize for both at the same time. So we've seen customers say, you know what, I want my cake and eat it too. I want to optimize step 1 to get to step 2. I'm going to give that some value. Let's say that's $10. I also want to optimize step 1 to get to the end because I don't want to push this unqualified traffic through. So I simultaneously want another goal that's going to influence what gets shown further downstream and give that some other weight. Maybe it's the value of the cart. Maybe it's some discount based on where they are in the funnel. But optimizing for those multiple goals allows marketers to then go do the trade-off between, hey, do I want the micro conversion, as you called it? Do I want the ultimate conversion? And account for the fact that there might be some big point of drop-off in between. And that is, to your point, something that you can't do manually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Great discussion. Thinking about another topic, the world has changed just a little bit. We're all locked down and spending a lot more time online. I know you had some thoughts about that. Do you want to share some of what you've been seeing? And then I'd like to share some of what we're seeing too.
Absolutely, yeah. This has been a dynamic environment, let's call it, for marketers and entrepreneurs and people that work in business. So it's been interesting to see, in the trenches, 15 to 20 businesses, like the struggles that they have to be able to react to this, what's worked and what hasn't worked. It's definitely been interesting to see like how different industries are obviously impacted in different ways. We have some clients that, unfortunately their businesses have failed because they didn't get around to funding, or, like sales dried up, or like they just had like other issues that just, they couldn't overcome. But we've also seen companies where, because they're reacting to this like kind of looming recession, all those, terrible things that are happening in the world right now, they've actually like generated exponential growth because they went from 0 to 1. They went from, we're not optimizing, we're not researching our customers. Like we have all these shifting preferences. We've seen that a lot with like voice of customer data. And like, we do a lot of market research in addition to customer research, and just seeing how, companies are shifting their strategy, whether it's marketing strategy or product strategy. Like we test around a lot of those things. And, now is the time to be scrappy and to put things in place that, increase your success rate and your probability to be able to still grow through this recession. So, some of the things we talked about, the customer research, the testing velocity, making sure that you're optimizing, tying revenue to those things, are definitely a big portion of that. But I know you have some pretty interesting data that you guys aggregated in Intellimize too. So I think it'd be cool to dig into some of that.
Happy to share them, and I'll go into them in 1 minute. I agree with everything that you said. It resonates a ton. I'm going to take a half step back because Christian asked a good question. He said, in that hypothetical flow where you've got 10 steps, when should you optimize every step versus when should you look at actually shrinking the whole thing and having it be like 5 steps instead of 10? Jeremy, I'm curious your perspective. I'll start with yes. I think you should try them both because it's not clear which one is going to work. It is, intuition would say fewer steps, they're more likely to convert. It may be, though, that if you're taking the same number of questions and just bunching them together into fewer steps, the steps will feel too long and that'll cause people to drop off more. And so often what we find actually is the limiting factor isn't the marketer's idea on, hey, I'm going to optimize step 2 by combining it with steps 3 and 4, because I think it's a great idea, Christian, but rather the technology. Often when you've got the multiple steps, it takes a bunch of engineering to be able to shift them around. If you do have the flexibility, it resonates for me a lot that one of the things you might do in optimizing steps 1 through 10 is to get rid of some of them or to combine something. Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, I've seen it. This is where, testing blows your mind because you don't have those universal truths, right? Like I've tested with like Zillow's like mortgage group, which is an amazing company. But the more information that we asked for and the more that we personalized the data that we were collecting, the higher we drove conversions, essentially. So it's like they went from, okay, yeah, you can connect me with a mortgage broker, so what? Like I could call someone on the phone and do that by myself. But when we really started to like add those steps, I think we got to like 14, 17 different like single slide, single question steps. And you would think that's counterintuitive, right? You're asking for so much information, like budget and income and like preferences around like home buying and things like that. Like, are you a veteran or are you not? Like, those are all like fundamental things that like a mortgage broker needs to be able to like, do a good job for you. And that was really counterintuitive, but drove literally millions of dollars and leads. And then I've seen with another client that we have right now, actually, if you don't put, like we've tested 6, 7 different ways to capture information. Like we've tried 2 steps and progress bars and basically every way you could possibly think of it. And if you don't put the whole form on one page and just let them fill it out, then you're losing people to abandonment. So it can definitely go both ways.
We have seen in another venue entirely the same thing. We have a customer, Laser Away, who provides beauty treatments, and they will have people sign up to say, hey, look, I want a consultation to do like laser hair removal. And they started with just a form, and that had a certain conversion rate. And they experimented with, why don't we put a step in front of the form, right there in real time on the page? Choose which treatment you want, 1 of 9 treatments. That increased conversion rate. They added a second step. Tell us what color hair you have or what part of the body you want the tattoo removed from or so on. And that increased conversion rate further. And so I'm definitely with you. There are it's the beauty of doing data-driven marketing. There are these counterintuitive things that emerge. And our hypothesis was like yours, that folks felt, oh, I'm going to get a better recommendation. It's going to be more valuable to me, more personalized for me. So yeah, resonates a ton.
Yeah, with e-com, we've tested a lot. We've tested across at least a dozen clients, probably just in the last, like 6 or 12 months, where, Jonathan on my team, he calls them quiz funnels. He's like, how do we get a personalized recommendation in the hands of somebody who wants a personalized recommendation? And it's super interesting that like it almost is like a trend right now, right? And it's piggybacked on this like personalization concept. Like people want that personalized, or localized feel. They want like a specific recommendation, not pick from 1,000 SKUs, right? So it's definitely interesting. We've seen a lot of success with that aspect of personalization too.
Right on. And now back to where you were talking about before about COVID. We too have seen us spending a lot more time online, more than double actually since the first half of March, before most of the lockdowns went into effect, when we looked across all of our clients. Now, we've also seen, as so often is the case, when you get more traffic, a bunch of it's less qualified, conversion rates have gone down, which is typical. On average, 34% since the first half of March. But fortunately, when traffic doubles, more than doubles, the conversion rates go down 34, the net's positive. Like the net is more conversions, more revenue for the companies we've been looking at. And some companies we've been talking to have been doing just what you said, Jeremy. They've been putting the right conversion rate optimization pieces in place and seeing significant growth as a result. I mean, there's a little bit of like necessity is the mother of invention, right? When the web is all we have, we focus on it and we get good results. And the effects we've seen have been far from uniform. B2B and e-commerce have fared fairly well. Financial services and other B2C services have suffered more in what we've seen across our customer base. And perhaps more broadly, we've seen that what worked a few months ago often no longer works. We need to keep changing as our prospect behavior changes. In fact, when we looked at websites that stayed static, they saw conversion rates drop by more than 40%, whereas dynamically personalized sites did 23 to 78% better than that. So like, it's always been important to meet our prospects where they are in their journey with us. It's even more important now that behavior is changing so very rapidly. And some of the suggestions we've been talking about with clients is like, visualize where your prospect is in their journey with you. Meet them there. And to do that, one of the plays we've seen work well is to connect experiences across the channels that you're communicating them with. For example, email-driven traffic to website quadrupled since the first half of March. Now, how many of those prospects in the emails you, the audience, have been sending saw a landing page or a homepage that mirrored the message they saw in the email, right? If they saw the innovation message in the email, did they see the innovation message on the landing page? They all should have. Paid search traffic, up 2.5x. It's 2.5x what it was pre-COVID. Same continuity of messaging should help there. Direct navigation traffic, more than double. We can go back to the example we talked about earlier. First-time visitor treated the same as the repeat visitor. In my humble opinion, we should all treat our homepages as landing pages. And Jeremy, I think you had a nice example about aligning messaging with the motivation of the visitor in the moment. Shall I share that and we'll talk through it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I picked this example specifically to kind of prove the point of, these changing preferences, changed behavior due to COVID. So we have a fintech company. They have this really cool kind of algorithm-led approach to investing, where they can, optimize your portfolio while also limiting the downside, just based on like how they use the algorithm. It's like the next phase. It's the future of robo-advising, essentially, which is really cool because I'm a nerd for fintech. So they started with this messaging around, and we got really positive feedback on this messaging around like having a simple subscription fee. So as opposed to like going to an advisor and paying a percentage, like let's have a flat rate fee where you get access to this tool that's going to totally change your finances and like your growth rate over the next 10, 20 years in your portfolio. And that resonated really well. People liked that concept because it was so radically different than the typical marketing in that space. What we did find though is, we were testing in the channel. So we were testing in channel, we're testing in email, we're testing on site, we're like optimizing across that whole customer journey. What we found is that we started seeing different, from testing, from voice of customer data, that those preferences were changing. And then it became less about, this flat rate concept and more about, okay, things are getting really weird right now. How do I save? How do I save money, right? So we shifted to this kind of, here's how much you can save over the next 20 years. And like fees, like that seems to really resonate with people at this time when people are worried about their financial situation and the uncertainty of the markets, things like that. So I made this little like infographic that just showed if you use an advisor, here's how much you're going to spend. If you use, other robo advisors, here's how much you're going to spend. But in the next 20 years, if you use like our particular product, it's just going to save you massively. So we got an 81% increase in like free trial conversions based on that.
Wow. Talk about framing. That's incredible. That is the power of meeting your market or your prospect where they are. And I think you have also addressed sense of risk in other environments like this example. And it's actually one that comes from one of our clients where, they were on the cart page and thinking about, hey, how do I get people more to check out? And tried to have people feel less risk, sort of addressing the concerns just as you were on the previous example. And they added some messaging just below proceed to checkout to give people a sense of, hey, you can pay later, you can do layaway, you can do returns. That caused the clicks on this call to action button, getting people to check out, to more than double. It increased by 106%. Just by thinking about what are the concerns about that prospect, where they were in the moment. And they tried several different versions of this. This one ended up being the highest performing one. Jeremy, you want to talk through this example?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite concepts or strategies in CRO is that, and I have all these little like buzz phrases that I use with clients and with my team, specificity sells. The more specific you can be, if you use data or facts or examples, concrete things that people can wrap their head around, typically speaking, you can like test into ways to find those wins. So, in this particular example, this is a lead gen company. They help people like who are in need that have like disabilities, and they need to be able to like work through that process of like, like I can't work. So like I need like these benefits. So we started kind of with this very general, like, find out if, do you qualify, get a free evaluation, which is kind of mapped to everyone, right? Like it doesn't really say anything specific. We actually worked to find like, what is that actual benefit amount that they get? Let's actually show them like a specific example of like, here's what this could be worth. You probably didn't realize this. So just by giving them that specific number and changing nothing else on the page, nothing else with the messaging, that produced a 6% increase in leads.
It's awesome. Absolutely awesome. And good. That specificity resonates a lot for me too. We've seen customers sort of bring it to life. You're sort of, you're putting yourself in their shoes and saying, okay, what next? What would this mean for me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's like an NLP principle of like, I think it's called future pacing. It's some term like that, but basically it's like, if you can have someone, this is an experience like we're selling through a website, through a technical platform. It's if you can get them to imagine what that benefit is going to look like for them in the future if they take an action today, and really clarify that, then you're going to change behavior and drive action, right? Or, alternatively, depending on what the product or service is, like, what is this horrible outcome that's going to happen if you don't take action today? So like there's different perspectives from like a brand perspective, messaging perspective on like how people want to like test into that. But, showing what that benefit is and being very clear and concise and compelling about it, that's a good strategy.
Resonates a bunch. Jeremy, there's one additional question in the chat. I think it makes more sense for you to answer that one than me.
Okay. What are your favorite tools, software for testing and analysis? Yeah, there's a lot of tools. I can talk a little bit about that. I know that like not every tool works for every marketer. There's like a lot of, different, like what's your tech stack? What should it be? To some extent, it's like the tools that you have and that you can use are going to be better than, than not having those things in place. We use a lot of different research tools, which like I focus on a lot. So, like heat mapping, scroll mapping data, like polling. So like SurveyMonkey, Hotjar, tools like that. We've used a lot of different testing platforms that are out there. So there's a bunch. There's, like free versions like Google Optimize, but there's also like much more sophisticated and advanced things like Intellimize, where it's like the amount of features and functionality and like what you can actually do with the software is, it's totally going to change the way that you optimize, because you have more opportunities, right? Like you have more tools in your tool belt. So hopefully that helps.
Michael, thank you for the question. Are there any other questions out there? We'll wait a few seconds to see if folks have other things. We hope you enjoyed this discussion. Jeremy, I love talking with you. We could talk about CRO for hours, and we have. I hope everyone listening in found this valuable as well. I hope the examples help bring it to life. We'll send out the recording to everyone who joined. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, tag us on social with your favorite website testing examples, what you learned, and we'll enjoy continuing the debate. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining. That was a ton of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.